If your outbound automation isn't generating a pipeline, it's not because the automation doesn't work, it's because you automated the wrong things in the wrong order on top of a system that was never ready for it. In this video, I'm walking you through the 4 sales automation red flags that are breaking your outbound system, why each one compounds damage over time, and what to fix before you automate one more thing. By the end of this video, you'll be able to diagnose exactly where your current setup is failing and what needs to happen before you build any more new automations. I'm Bob Shu, founder of RevSync. Now we build and run these systems for B2B companies across more than 10 industries, and the same 4 red flags keep showing up every single time. Let's start with the red flag number 1. You're running one channel with no orchestration. Okay, we have 2 systems here, one showcasing what a single system looks like, and one showcasing what an omni-channel properly orchestrated workflow looks like. So let's dive right into it. So in the single channel with no orchestration, your lead enters, your cold email is sent, no reply, no LinkedIn follow-up, no call triggered, no CRM entry. So everything, essentially your entire lead follow-up and lead status gets lost right after the reply because you have no way of tracking where the lead went, where it came from, and there's no data in your CRM, and your SDRs are obviously busy, so they will forget some leads and they won't enter them into the CRM, so they're never tracked. And the lead is gone forever in this case. Now, moving to a properly orchestrated omnichannel flow with automations in place that actually work. Lead comes in, cold email sent, no reply, automatically LinkedIn touch triggered. So we flag the no reply, and that lead gets routed to LinkedIn for omnichannel engagement. If they respond positively, a lead is enriched with the proper information you guys care about and logged into your CRM in the correct area with the appropriate tags. And obviously following LinkedIn, if they don't reply on LinkedIn, a call alert is sent to your SDR where they call that lead. And then you re-enter that lead in a nurture sequence that starts from here again if that lead goes to your SDR call. And obviously if a lead responded positively, great, it's in your CRM, and then your meeting is booked. Pretty straightforward. But now the contrast is very different compared to you losing a lead completely after that email is sent to not only touching that lead on all the platforms possible, but also having proper tracking in place to log which step or which channel converts the best for the leads you're targeting. And if we go back to automations and applying automations that are actually useful compared to just sounding cool, in this first flow, when you lose your lead, this entire workflow essentially has no automations in place. And even people would add automations at the start to make things look cool, but they're not being placed in areas that actually improve or replicate what your team is doing manually. So even for this flow, how I would add automations is I would add automation right here for when there's no reply, it will send an alert to your team saying like no reply or lead is ghosted, and then trigger the second step, letting your team know that, hey, LinkedIn comes next, or hey, a call comes next, because typically your team does it manually. But here, the automations are placed in a way where it replicates how your team would manually do these steps, entering the CRM, even following up on LinkedIn, updating the status, or alerting them for a call. So these automations are placed in areas that actually improve efficiency instead of sounding cool. Before you keep watching, if you want us to look at your current outbound system and tell you exactly where it's breaking down, grab a quick chat using the link down below, and we'll do this diagnostic for every client before we build a single automation. And now you might be wondering, well, when am I ready for automations? You're ready for automation when your team has hit a capacity with manual steps and manual updates. For example, if you have one SDR or if you're founder-led and then you find yourself struggling to update leads properly because you're getting an adequate amount of cold outreach, or if you're doing multiple channels of outreach and you can't keep up with how the leads are coming in per channel. So for example, you're doing cold email, LinkedIn, cold calls, ads as well, and you're finding that you cannot, or you don't have the capacity to update the leads properly or follow up properly, then you need automations to replace what you would do manually and essentially increase your capacity. So when you have a capacity bottleneck, that's when you need automations. The second red flag is building a complex automation around an approach you have never really tested by hand and verified. This one's expensive because the automation works perfectly, but produces nothing. We had a client who wanted to automate outreach to every person who engaged with their team's LinkedIn post. Custom scraper, daily enrichment, refresh, filtering, targeting, full sequences across LinkedIn and email, completely buildable. We stopped them and asked one question. Have you ever manually DM'd a LinkedIn post engager and seen it actually convert? They had not. we told them to spend 1 week doing it by hand before we build the actual system. That week of manual testing would tell them whether this channel was worth building. Automating before that answer existed would have cost them weeks of build time and budget on an approach that might have never worked. So you can see here, we have the same comparison. We have the red flag and the right way. Red flag is automating first and we don't validate. And the right way is validating manually and then we build the automation to support it. And if we dive into the steps, you can see that for the one without validation, we would have an idea, we'd build the full automation right away, and we would launch the campaign, no results, we would waste weeks of build time through an unproven process that doesn't even work. So we get zero ROI on this entire approach. Second is where you guys would want to be, or every ideal founder would like to have, is you have a new outreach idea, you have your team manually tested for just 1 week. That's enough. And then you can tell right away, does it convert? If yes, then we build an automation on a proven approach. So you're scaling something that works. Because let's say your team does the manual tests and manually one SDR can, let's say, get 10 positive replies. You know for a fact, if we scale this up with multiple inboxes, multiple accounts on LinkedIn to do outreach, we can get 10x, 20x the reply and lead volume without you needing to hire more people. But if it doesn't work, then we can pivot to all the other ideas that you have and then retest manually. So this would go back to this over and over again until you hit the yes, and then we would build it out. So that's the best way to do it. Scaling systems that only work, testing manually before you build something out. So let me show you guys an example of a workflow we actually built for our client where they manually tested it for 1 week prior and it was very fruitful. So we built a complete custom bot and click table to scale it up. So here, the intent the client realized was that they were looking at Twitter complaints as an intent. So Twitter complaints of people complaining on the service my client offers that is not working for them. So they saw a few complaints and then they were like, hey, let's reach out to the companies that have Twitter complaints on their actual service. So they did it manually for a week, reaching out to the companies and saying like, hey, I saw, like for example, Uber, like, hey, Uber, I saw you were getting complaints on your customer service being bad. We can do it better for you in this way. So they did it manually first. They manually found, I think, 100 companies on their end and found companies with complaints in Twitter and reach out to the people directly responsible for customer service at these companies. And it turned out to be very good. So we built a custom agent on Twitter that scrapes every single day of complaints of customer service. And then we would enrich. So this table takes in the actual complaints themselves and the company's information. And then what happens is we would enrich other roles at those companies that are responsible for customer complaints. And these are the ideal roles from those companies that receive complaints. And we would craft a personalized complaint line saying like, hey, I saw people complaining about your customer service. Here are the complaints they mentioned, and here's how we can solve it properly. But this is a perfect example of how a manual test worked well, and we were able to build custom workflows to scale it up for them. And no matter how complex your manual outreach process or idea is, there are ways now to scale it up and automate it. So the sky's the limit, and please test as many as you can manually before you build something out. The third red flag is a fully automated stack that doesn't address the actual problem. The tools are running, the sequences are live, the dashboards look very busy. The pipeline is still not moving because nobody diagnosed where the system was actually stuck before deciding what to build. We ask every client the same question before we recommend a single automation. What is the biggest choke point in your sales process right now? Not what looks impressive to fix, not what a competitor is doing, but what is the specific place where leads are entering and value is being lost? The answer to that question determines everything we build. Without it, you end up with a stack of automations that generate activity and zero actual revenue value. Okay, so here's how I put it visually. You start with here, obviously, client wants automations because now they're fancy and the hot topic. Then we would look at what is the biggest choke point. Typically, if a client has 6 ideal automations they want to implement and they think are cool, we would look at what is actually impactful and the choke point and what is just fancy. And we would always prioritize the ones we diagnose as high priority and high ROI. So in this case, you can see that we skipped 3. Building fancy dashboards are what sounds good. Building custom landing pages, build job change alerts. These all sound really good and are typically the ones that clients come to us asking for us to build because these all sound very fancy. And they sound impressive, but have zero pipeline impact when they're built out. So these are the ones we would often prioritize. Leads not routed on reply, because speed to lead is so important. If you can respond to a lead within 5 to 10 minutes of a positive reply, your conversion rate increases by 10%, not your actual booking rate, which is insanely important. And typically, most companies we work with don't have this in place at all. Second thing is manual CRM entry slowing the team down. Most teams that we work with that are mid to large size, they have their SDRs manually entering leads coming from each channel. SDRs are humans, they're busy, and they forget to enter leads into their CRM, which results in this being non-existent. So you always forget and you don't know how many leads came from which channel and which ones are converting the best. Last thing is speed to lead. Obviously, this ties directly with leads not routed on reply and impacts your overall conversion rate by a whole ton. So we fix these first, and that's the real bottleneck before we even consider these fancy things. And this automation would generate you the highest return on your investment to start off with. And you might be asking, how do we even get to this stage to start with? When we hop on a call with you or do that free diagnostics, we would literally use our experience, because we've worked with so many teams in the past in different industries, to look at what the commonalities are of people in your space or companies in your space that have similar systems, what they automated previously that would generate the highest ROI compared to what you think generates the highest ROI. So typically, that's why these three are the most popular ones, because these are the ones we see that are the most common across mid to large size teams. And those are the ones that we typically tackle first to generate the highest ROI. Okay, the fourth red flag is the one that makes all the others worse. Your CRM, your sequencer, your data provider, and your LinkedIn tools are running independently with humans manually bridging every gap between them. Automating on top of a disconnected stack makes chaos move even faster. Every lead that enters your system loses value at each handoff because data isn't flowing automatically between the tools that actually need it. A positive reply comes in and someone has to manually find it, log it, alert the sales rep, and update the CRM. That gap between reply and response is where a deal dies completely. And no amount of outbound side automation will fix what is broken on the back end. Now, here's a clear visual breakdown on comparing a system with tools not talking to each other and tools that talk to each other. And we see this across pretty much all our clients. And this is the most common type of structure that we see with broken tools. So for the red flag, you can see that you have the CRM, email sequencer, data provider, LinkedIn tool. These are all bringing you in data this way. And then what happens is everything's manual. You can see all manual steps, and then data all comes with human, and all this data comes here with human handoff and manual entry. What happens is data gets lost here because humans are unreliable and inconsistent. They get tired, and you have delayed follow-ups, and the deal dies in the gap. So you have very low conversion rates. And next, with a fully automated system, you can see where we bring in these automations. So every manual step essentially becomes automated, which improves accuracy and tracking. So you can see CRM, you have auto sync, positive reply, and then that is auto enriched and routed to Slack alert to your sales rep. So they get alerted right away, and they only use their attention when there's a positive reply. They don't need to keep monitoring your CRM or your email sequencer for positive replies. They only need to monitor the alert. So this also increases their capacity because it frees up a lot of time. And your data provider and LinkedIn tools auto sync as well with the same exact flow where they're enriched, added into your CRM, and the Slack alert is only sent out when we have a positive reply come in. And then obviously, if there's a positive reply, that means you want a deal going to your CRM pipeline, which is auto added as well. So that removes essentially 2 to 3 steps of what SDR would manually have to do, improving the accuracy and also giving your SDRs more capacity to handle even more replies. And here's an actual workflow that we built in Make.com for a client that kind of represents this entire process. You can see here, we have email sequencer tagging any replies that we receive from that sequencer. And then the agents that we build, we have a combination of GPT, Claude, and Perplexity that would categorize the reply and then enrich relevant information about the company. And that is all added into their CRM. In this case, you can see, ClickUp is their CRM. And then we have email sent out to their SDRs. And also we track the leads separately in a Google Sheet. So we have 2 sources of truth, not only your CRM, but also a Google Sheet as a backup for tracking which leads responded positively. And this works 24/7. And your SDRs will only be alerted when there's a positive reply via email. Pretty straightforward. Here's what you gotta understand that most teams running outbound automations don't. The automation isn't the problem, and it's not the solution. It's a multiplier. It makes whatever underneath move faster and hit harder in either direction. If your foundation has gaps, they widen the gaps at scale. Every channel running in isolation, every unvalidated approach, every automation built around the wrong bottleneck, every tool operating in its own silo compounds into a system that looks like it's working, but actually degrades. The teams generating a consistent outbound pipeline right now fix the foundation before they automate anything. They choose the right channels, validated before building, diagnosed before deploying, and integrated before they scale it. If your current setup has any of the 4 red flags covered in this video, the pipeline you're losing isn't coming back on its own. Grab some time with our team using the link below, and I'll walk you through your current outbound system and show you exactly where it's breaking down and tell you what to fix before you build another automation.